It's just a habit. Sorry. Welcome to the Carnegie Town Hall. The Public Services Committee meeting will begin in 1 minute.
Good evening. We're going to call the Public Service Committee meeting to order here. We'll have a roll call.
Council members Erpenbach? Here. Kylie?
Here.
Staggers?
Present.
Erickson?
Here. First off, motion to approve our minutes from July 8th.
So moved.
Moved.
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
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 Aye. All right, that motion carries. Our first presentation tonight is by Adam Roach with talking about mobile vending. Adam?
Good evening. Thank you for having me. About a year and a half ago, we started to discuss mobile vending within downtown Sioux Falls. Across the country, it's increasingly becoming more popular, and we started to see more mobile vendors throughout our downtown. So to get things started here, so why are we focusing on mobile vending? There's currently no ordinance that clearly allows or does not allow mobile vending within the central business district. Our goal with these guidelines is to provide a clear and concise approach to those wishing to sell food intended for immediate consumption from a mobile vending unit. With that, we recognize that mobile food vendors offer a unique experience to a thriving downtown, and we want to embrace this type of food culture. We also recognize that downtown restaurant owners have made a significant investment into their business and cannot pack up their restaurant when things get slow. So what we're really trying to do is strike a balance by protecting brick and mortar within downtown while allowing mobile food vendors to coexist. With this research that we've conducted, our utmost priority was to ensure health and safety of mobile vending patrons was considered. We worked diligently with health, fire, and police to ensure that all the bases are covered in terms of health and safety, and also to ensure clarity amongst the mobile vendor industry. New definitions will be added to delineate between peddlers, mobile vendors within the central business district, and mobile food vendors on private property. Currently, if somebody would come to our office and say, hey, I want to sell downtown, we have to ensure that they have a peddler's permit through the police department. And that's currently our only mechanism to regulate mobile vending. And it doesn't really outline specific items in relation to mobile vending, but therefore kind of outlines the peddler's requirements. So the process that we went through to get to this point, extensive research has been conducted on how other communities have been handling mobile vending. One of the guiding documents for our research was the National League of Cities Mobile Vendor Report that compared small, medium, and large-size markets. A series of meetings were held with our internal team that included Councilor Erpenbach, Jim David, Downtown Sioux Falls Incorporated, Economic Development, Police, Licensing, Fire, Health, Public Parking, and attorneys. There's really a lot of moving parts to mobile vending. When I first took on this project, I said, no problem, we'll have this done in a couple months. Well, here we are a year and a half later, still trying to get things going here. Invitations to stakeholder meetings were sent to all restaurants located within the Central Business District to seek feedback on any issues that they may have had in the past within terms of mobile vending. While issues have been minimal, we feel that it is important to be proactive rather than reactive. All mobile vendors that have a current peddler's license on file were also contacted and invited to City Hall to participate in discussions regarding mobile vending. Participation was better than anticipated, and we garnered a lot of great feedback. And a majority of the guidelines that we proposed were welcomed amongst the mobile vendor community and did not appear to be an inhibiting factor for them. So what are some of those guidelines that we are considering today? One, permitting fees, hours of operation, parking limitations, location constraints, health standards, fire safety standards, and enforcement of provisions. And I'll go into detail on these in the coming slides. So currently it costs $304 for folks to vend from public property, and that's broken down from the peddler's permit that they obtain to the health department permit that they obtain. The proposed fees is something that we would certainly like committee input on, as it's kind of up in the air on what should be charged for something like this. In comparable communities across the country, fees range from $290 to $800. And we think a middle-of-the-road approach is best, as we don't want fees too high to inhibit folks from wanting to venture into the mobile vending business or the mobile vending industry, but high enough to cover staff time to respond to processing applications and enforcement and so forth. The next item is hours of operation. This has been a very contentious topic, and we would like council committee to weigh in on this matter as well. The cutoff time proposed by mobile vendors is 3 a.m., as they have a spike in business when the drinking establishments close downtown. Concerns about the hours of operation have been raised by police, businesses, and the residents that live above commercial properties. With the police, it's the congregation of intoxicated folks after bars close that create excessive noise, conflict, and loitering. With the residents, it's the noise emitting from the transactions that are going below them, down below. People yelling out orders, just people being loud. And with the business owners, incidents have happened in the past at mobile vending units that are located adjacent to a specific business. When it was later reported, it was reported that the incident was at that business when it was outside of their business. So they were concerned with the image. And then also the trash and litter associated with mobile food vendors. That was another concern of the businesses. On to parking limitations. Parking would not be allowed in any diagonal spaces, as conducting transactions in designated parking spaces creates a safety issue because those windows open up to the open stalls within those diagonal parking spaces. Mobile vendors will be treated like any other parking customer in terms of rules and regulations. Meters would need to be fed for the utilization of the parking spaces by providing utilization of public parking spaces by mobile vendors for the allotted time limit. So essentially, they're treated the same as you or I. You have an hour, put in for an hour. If you're over the hour, you're going to get ticketed. The third point, no concession trailers would be allowed to vend from the public right-of-way in the central business district. This certainly creates a safety concern of the concession trailers hitching and unhitching within downtown, and then also the length of most concession trailers and vehicles would basically equate to taking up 3 parking spaces. And with the dense environment that we're trying to promote downtown, it's kind of difficult to justify taking up 3 parking spaces. As far as location constraints go, and this is where we would like some council committee input. We have fielded a few complaints in the past that mobile vendors do not want to pay vendor fees, and this is for special events within downtown Sioux Falls. So they will park outside of the boundaries of the special events and just kind of poach the customers rather than paying those fees, because some feel that they are excessive. But generally, that takes away revenue from the event host. If they have something to capture some of their sales as well, they're not seeing those funds. And so this has been pretty important for downtown Sioux Falls and other people that host events downtown. To ensure pedestrian safety, no mobile vendors are allowed to park within an intersection safety zone. This is currently enforced by police right now, just to ensure pedestrian safety crossing the streets. And also a location buffer is suggested to inhibit mobile vending within X number of feet of an entrance. This practice is currently underway in many communities across the nation, and it has seemed to work really well. One of the concerns is someone invests in a bunch of ice cream equipment, and then I park my ice cream vendor truck outside their front door. And so you can see how that may create conflicts. We've looked at anywhere from 100 to 300 feet. We've mapped this out through our GIS department. On the high end of 300 feet, it really eliminates a lot of places within downtown to mobile vend. We personally, as the committee, we feel that a 100-foot buffer is preferred. It allocates enough space for mobile trucks to park within downtown, but not to infringe on that buffer, that established buffer. As far as health standards go, mobile vending units are treated the same as any restaurant. 2 unannounced inspections. They have to have the proper equipment, the proper sanitation methods must be used. They would also, the health department working with them, they would like a litter plan as any restaurant in the city of Sioux Falls would have to have. That includes providing recycling and trash receptacles. And another requirement that we would like to see is mobile vendors will be responsible for 25 feet within their area to clean up the trash and anything that's related to their business, or just being a good neighbor and picking up anything within the 25 feet. No unauthorized dumping would be allowed in private or city waste trash receptacles. We really haven't heard many complaints on this, but it can be easy if you're in an alleyway, there's a dumpster right there, just throw your trash in there. As far as fire safety standards go, as per our fire marshal, all vending units utilizing liquid petroleum as their fuel source would be required to have a third-party inspection. This is to ensure that their tanks are above a certain date, and I'm sorry, I don't know the specifics on it. Dean got real technical on that with me. But it's simply drive to Sigler or any other third-party fire inspection service and receive a certificate and turn that in with your application. On to one of the last slides here. Thanks for bearing with me. Enforcement of provisions. Enforcement of the mobile vending ordinance would be complaint-based and handled by community development, health, and code enforcement. This doesn't mean that we have staff out walking the beat to look for violators. Our downtown Sioux Falls community is pretty good at contacting us if anything is out of line. Police would have the authority to cease operations that have an immediate impact to health and the welfare of our community. And if a mobile vendor is becoming a nuisance and deemed to pose a threat to safety, then they would have the authority to shut that operation down. Or if they are not operating within the guidelines of the city, such as if there's a time limit, or if they're improperly parked or creating a nuisance on the sidewalk for the flow of pedestrians. And with that, in conclusion, we are committed to establishing a system that allows mobile food vendors and brick and mortar restaurants to coexist in Sioux Falls. We feel that allowing mobile vending with certain limitations can create a more active, lively, and enjoyable place to live and play by accommodating the uniqueness of food trucks. With concurrence of the Public Services Committee, we are seeking input on the suggested guidelines presented today and would specifically like feedback on the items listed on this slide, that hours of operations, the buffer, the fee schedule, and any other things that have come to your mind while listening to this presentation today. So with your blessing, we would like to take this project to the next step and put these guidelines into a draft ordinance for your review. We'd like to provide another opportunity for public input, and that would be inviting the restaurant owners or the restaurant operators and the mobile food vendors in again to discuss the proposal and then bring it forward to council in ordinance form. So at this time, I'd like to field any questions or discuss the items that we were seeking council feedback on.
Councilor Kiley. Thank you, Adam.
Thank you, Adam. Very good presentation. And the hours of operation, I understand you're looking for input, as well as the second bullet point there, I think is a key one to me, the buffer for operations.
Sure.
To occur within proximity to our existing brick and mortar, because we certainly want to protect their investments. I think that's very important. So I'm glad that you had already identified that. And then the fee schedule under the any other items to consider, and we'd had the opportunity yesterday when I happened to just bump into you in your office to ask about displays of, for instance, the health department permits, and there's a peddler's permit, and then there's a right-of-way permit. I would think that we'd want to consider, this is kind of a subject similar to the changes that were made recently to the taxi ordinance before I became a part of this council, and I know that one of the big things there was that an individual that's using the services should be able to clearly identify that this is an authorized, in this case, vendor. So I would encourage that we include that these permits are clearly displayed, or some kind of language that could be permanently or temporarily placed on the outside of the vendor's vehicle that would identify that to me as a public that, yes, this is an authorized vendor here, and that he or she has met the requirements of all three permits.
I certainly think that's a great recommendation. And as per, I think the requirements of the restaurants as well have to do the same thing, display those health certificates or certificate of occupancy, different things like that. But I'll work with Danny Brown on that.
Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Councilor Stagers.
Yes. In your presentation, you mentioned mobile food vendors. How many do we have in Sioux Falls now?
Licensed peddlers, mobile food vendors that we have, I think the last number was about 24 or 25.
Really?
And the number that actually vend downtown is anywhere between 5 and 8.
So,
Not at any one given time. So you'll see them one week, and then the next week you won't see them, or you'll see them only on Friday nights, or specific vendors only on Saturday nights.
well, you're talking about new regulations here, but I assume there's already regulations. Is that true or not? With these vendors, mobile food vendors?
There is not mobile food vending regulations. What they have been falling under is a peddler's permit because they're making the transactions.
Okay. And can you tell me what additional things they would have to do with these new proposals from what they're doing now?
One of the new things that they would have to do is get that certificate from a third-party fire inspector.
Okay.
Then they would also be required to obtain a central business district right-of-way permit. So that would be essentially a mobile vending permit and the authority to operate within the downtown and the public right-of-way.
Okay.
So currently, there's nothing on the books to allow that or to not allow that. That's why we're here.
Okay. So this is, from what you said, this looks like it's just for downtown then, huh?
Correct, yep. We don't dictate what happens on private property. That includes within downtown and outside of downtown. And that's where a majority of those licensed peddlers operate, is out in underserved areas by Southeast Tech on private property to cater to some folks out there.
Okay. And are we having really any problems with these?
You know, we have had some issues. I think very minor in nature, again, like I mentioned about an establishment's name being dragged through the mud even though something happened away from their business. We've also heard of dumping of condiments, which isn't really a big deal, but I mean, when you, as a shopkeeper, you don't want to go to your shop in the morning and have to sweep out the gutter of somebody else's mess. I would say the biggest issue is when somebody calls our office and they say, hey, well, I want a mobile vent downtown. We don't have anything that says, you know, clear and concise guidelines for them to follow. It's kind of a good neighbor policy where, hey, don't park in front of somebody's business, and don't park in front of the taco restaurant downtown and sell tacos.
Yeah, I guess I'm just wondering here, are we trying to pass some regulations when there's not really a big problem? I mean, this doesn't seem to be very significant to
Well,
me.
they certainly are needed. If you have to field the calls that come in, and it's very unclear the whole process of it, that's where we're trying to have clarity, because even the mobile vendors, when they go talk to Sherelle at the police department that does licensing, you know, she has a nice list to put together of who to contact. But really, there's no clear and concise guidelines right now, and we only see the, I shouldn't say issue, but the appeal of mobile vending units to increase.
Councilor Offenbach.
Thank you. Thanks, Adam. This is a great presentation, a great start to this conversation, because it is something that many of us in the community don't realize is even going on.
Right.
Some of us of a certain age aren't up at 3 a.m. and some of us have, we don't live in this neighborhood, and so we aren't aware of what those issues are. One of the biggest concerns I'm going to have, and I'm going to be very encouraging of the group, is that hours of operation, that we want to be very specific about hours of operation, because this neighborhood, and we're sitting in the middle of downtown, this neighborhood is full of residential housing now. And those folks are having to deal with noise issues, they're having to deal with trash issues, and they're having to deal with things that the rest of us don't have to worry about because they live in this neighborhood. And so that's going to be a really big thing for me is hours of operation. I have already heard from folks about this that are very concerned about it. The other thing that we're going to hear a lot about, and I've heard about already as well, is that idea of these businesses downtown. We need to be very specific about their concerns with, again, the taco stand pulling up in front of the taco restaurant. We have to be very specific about where those folks can sell and where they can't. And so I think for us to sit here and say, oh, I haven't seen it, or we haven't heard anything about it, or it hasn't been a problem, is really sticking our heads in the sand. And I think we need to be really cognizant that this is an issue in this neighborhood and that it's something we need to deal with, partly because we're drawing more and more people into this neighborhood all the time. So I guess I'm looking forward to your draft of the ordinance. I want to see what you're kind of proposing. I don't want to really throw out numbers, but I think keeping them open until 3 a.m. outside of a bar is completely inappropriate. And I will be the one that's on the far conservative side for those hours of operation, because I think that's only fair to the people that live in that neighborhood. But I want to kind of see what you're going to bring forward with that. And then my other question then would be, and it's something that you showed me previously, was kind of a map of, if we did this, if we did the 300 feet thing and the you can't park in front of the other restaurants thing, what would that look like? Where could I vend if I decide I'm going to open a mobile, whatever, candy cane business, where could I park? So that it's very clear that I don't have to kind of read through all the regulations, that I can see on that map very clearly where I could park, because now we have different, kinds of parking on Main Avenue. And, so if we could have a map that kind of went with that draft ordinance, that would be very helpful. But I'm looking forward to the next steps.
You bet. I will get those organized and pass them along.
Great. Any other questions? Go ahead.
And going back, I think just the aspect of making sure that they've been inspected by the health department, they're meeting all of our codes that all of our other restaurant owners are required to meet. I think that is extremely important, whether we've had an issue before or not, because that's a public health issue.
Yes.
And thinking about again, going back to the permits and the right-of-way permit, what about the situation here, trying to play devil's advocate? What about the situation where they're not really in a public right-of-way, but they're using private property because the business that they're using is not open that particular evening or weekend? In terms of location, how can we still control their location if they're on private property, in terms of the taco vendor not vending in front of the taco shop? So maybe it's I know we've titled a right-of-way permit. Maybe it should be titled a location permit, or right-of-way and location permit, or whether it has to be two separate, but we might want to go that way so that we can control the location on private property.
And I would have to resort to our attorney, Danny Brown, on whether or not we would be able to control what happens on private property, but we'll certainly look into that.
Sure, because otherwise or I shouldn't say I've just potentially identified a loophole in the process.
Right. And we have discussed it before, and
From the record.
and whether or not those mobile vendors would open up to the public right-of-way on a sidewalk, and how would we handle that as well. So.
Any other questions? I just would add one, it's not a fee, but add a sales tax license on there. They obviously need to have a sales tax license. It doesn't cost, but it's so important to make sure that these peddlers understand if they're new business, they should know but there's no fee, but it just makes it a lot easier when Department of Revenue is trying to track down some of the peddlers that are moving around. So it does make it a lot easier. I look forward to, I appreciate your presentation, and I look forward to hearing what you have in writing as far as the ordinances. And feel free to reach out to any of us. The one thing that I have the concern about is also I share the concern of the hours of operation. I think that you have 3 a.m., you're inviting potential dangerous situations with the bars closing and having people loiter around and litter as well. So, but I think it could be something great for people that live downtown as well and have a different feel for the downtown as well. So if it's done correctly, I think it could be a good thing. So thank you.
Thank you.
Question, Madam
Yeah.
Chair. Do we need to make a motion to, or are we just kind of directing consensus that Adam's going to bring us the next
I think
round?
we're just directing the consensus
Okay.
and the feedback. He had mentioned that they're going to do the public input meeting and draft review and then discuss the proposal. I think maybe it might even be beneficial to bring something like this to an informational meeting as well, just so all of council can be up to date on it as we move forward, just because it's such a new thing for the downtown.
If I might just suggest that this committee see it first before it goes to informational, that would be helpful so that we can kind of weed out some of those. We might have that battle over midnight or 3 a.m. for closing hours in this forum and then take it to informational.
I agree.
don't know.
And we do have another public service meeting in March. And so if you'd like to bring it back with any updates at that point, that might be a good time to do as well.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
I was just going to ask, is that a realistic time frame for you to have some of that information?
Yes.
Yeah, because it has been a long haul just up to this point.
It really has been a long haul, and I think we have enough information to continue moving forward.
Yeah, great. It'd be nice if we could keep it moving forward. But again, Adam, very great, good presentation. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, next we'll move to the building permit inspections. Mike Cooper, Director of Planning and Zoning, or Ron Bell, whoever would like to present.
Mike Cooper. I'm just going to turn this quickly over to Ron, and we've asked Ron tonight to give you just a very general overview of permits and inspections, and then knowing that you might have more follow-up questions, then we can address those at the end. So, Ron.
Good evening, Ron Bell with Building Services. I do have a PowerPoint presentation, but after I got it all done, I took a look at our building permits. And anybody that comes in and obtains a building permit, practically all the information that is in the ordinance is in the building permit that really deals with inspection requirements and so forth. At the very beginning, when the applicant comes in and signs for a building permit, he's really saying that he's authorizing representatives of the city to come in and be able to inspect the work that is being done. And in addition, he's accepting responsibility that he's going to be meeting codes as far as that's concerned. The actual building permit that's being posted, it used to be a blue card, and now it's on paper. And on that, it used to be just the building permit was all that there was, but on the back side, it had this information that's on the front side. But it still defines those inspections that are required for the actual building side of the building permit. And also goes into specifying that the holder of the permit is required to request an inspection at least 1 day in advance, and is required to allow that work to be accessible for inspection. You can't cover up something and expect that our inspectors are going to be able to see the things that they're looking at, especially when it comes to framing inspection and so forth. The fine print, which I know that a lot of people don't read, but on the back side, it goes into the required building inspections. Again, it reiterates that the holder of the permit is required to request his inspections. We're asking that his inspections are requested at least 1 day in advance. No work can be done beyond approval of an inspection. It's the responsibility of a licensed contractor for plumbing, electrical, mechanical to call for his inspections, unless we're talking about a residential construction where the owner chooses not to use licensed contractor, chooses to do the work himself, and those are homeowners permits. Then it's his responsibility to call for those inspections. Then in addition to that, it lays out the time period that's expected for a project for the inspections. And for lack of a better term, as far as building is concerned, there's 3 required inspections. It's a footing inspection, a frame inspection, and a final inspection. The footing inspection is where we're looking at the size of the footings to make sure that the footings are installed and constructed in accordance with engineer design plans that have been approved, that the reinforcement is there, that the soils conditions are acceptable for the footings. If we see that there's fill ground where these footings are going to be required, we're going to require an engineer to verify that fill ground has a 95% compaction capability. In addition to that, this also says that the electrical services and plumbing groundwork is also part of that inspection. The next one is the framing inspection, and the easiest way to explain that is before everything gets covered up, we're looking for a structural inspection before the sheetrock occurs. We're looking at everything from rafters, studs, joists, fire blocking. The electrical has to be in place. All the wiring that's going to be covered up is during the frame inspection. And the same thing goes with the plumbing and with the mechanical systems that are in there. And then with that, the last one is a final inspection, and that's basically when everything is all done. And you repeat the process all over again for building, plumbing, electrical, mechanical, for those types of inspections to assure that we're looking at not just the structural, but now we're looking into the fire and life safety requirements and the standards for electrical, plumbing, and mechanical. So that kind of gives you a really overview of what the inspections are. Approval required. This is part of the ordinance again that you can't go beyond a certain portion of the project until these inspections have occurred. And again, this is talking like the sheetrock inspection, that we might do a frame inspection, but you can't cover it up with sheetrock until the plumber and the electrical and the mechanical has been through there. Now, as far as corrections, we've got a couple of options, and that is when our inspectors go out and do inspections, they'll leave a tag showing that there are inspections for certain portions of the work they do. I can't say that they do this all the time, but for house inspections, for electrical, plumbing, mechanical, you'll see tags down by your electrical panel showing that those inspections have occurred. If there's a code violation, we've got a form here that an inspector can choose to fill out the inspection request, which gives the address, the permit number, what the actual code violation is. Now, I'm not saying that inspectors do this all the time either, because the vast majority of inspections where there is a correction, the inspector's calling up the permit holder. In most cases, it's a contractor. Either that or the contractor's there while he's doing the inspection. He'll give the list of those things. He will document that within our system, and then we expect that contractor to do the corrections and call for the inspection. We utilize this form basically as a notice of violation. We've had cases where corrections just simply don't get done, and this can be given to the permit holder saying this has to be done, and this could serve as a notice of violation, which then goes into the administrative citation process, which follows up with another notice of violation, and then citations 1, 2, and 3. So there are forms out there, but I got to tell you that the vast majority of the corrections are handled during the inspection with the contractor, with the homeowner, and those corrections are completed, and it's a requirement for another inspection after that. And I'm lost here. Oops. Identification. Our inspectors carry identification badges that they're expected that when they go to a property that they do identify themselves at the house. Not just identify them as a building inspector, but hopefully get a conversation going with the person like a homeowner or whatever's taking a look at what they're there for, what they're looking for, and so forth. We have a policy that adults at home, we will not do an inspection inside of somebody's houses with only children present. If we're going into somebody's house, there has to be an adult there with us, or a contractor, somebody responsible person there. As far as private property rights are concerned, just keep in mind that when they get the permit, they're signing that they're allowing people to come onto their private property to do those inspections. Whenever we deal with complaints and so forth, we have to have permission to get onto that property. We will not go onto a property on a complaint basis without a permission. And if somebody tells us to leave, we leave. We respect private property rights, and we've been doing that for years. As far as job safety requirements, again, these are policies. Employees are required to wear hard hats in designated areas, and our policy is that our employees will not be climbing unstable ladders. If they remove or displace something, it's their responsibility to get it back to the way it was. And there's no expectation that any of our inspectors are going to go into a place that's of any danger, and so forth. So that gives you a vast overview of our inspection process. And I'm here for questions on this.
Counselor Stagers.
Yes, I've always wondered about this question I'm going to ask you. Let's suppose that we have a building inspector going into a newly constructed home and saying everything is okay, and then the next day the roof falls in. Does the city ever liable for mistakes that might have been done by an inspector?
Are the attorneys still here? As far as liability is concerned, that once you get into the court systems, I can't predict that what's going to happen with the courts. I would assume that if there is a presumption that it met code and it did not, there would be some distinct liabilities. I can relate to Fargo, North Dakota, where they inspected a pre-engineered steel building, and the inspections that they did on the vertical steel beams on a rigid frame, there's what's called web stiffeners that will stiffen that beam as far as heavy snow loads that have occurred. The inspector did not require those web stiffeners. And the city of Fargo ended up with an extreme amount of cost for that through the court systems. So there's liabilities, but I can't tell you what they are without going through the court systems.
I've never heard of a case here in Sioux Falls, so we're doing pretty good.
Well, we haven't had buildings that have fallen down, thank God.
Okay. Also, if I could ask another question. Has a final inspection been done on the event center?
Yes, sir.
So we don't have any further inspections to take place on the event center?
The certificate of occupancy was issued, as a matter of fact, this last week.
This last week?
Yep.
Certificate of occupancy. And then also, this is a question that's asked all the time, the siding. What is going on with that?
Our inspectors were out there when this was occurring. The siding was judged to be an acceptable weather-resistant barrier that met code, and the looks of the siding was not an issue that was within the realms of the code for enforcement.
Okay, so, I mean, when you get up close to it, there seems to be gapping in some places, and
But there's flashings behind that siding also.
Okay.
With the installation of it.
Okay. Thank you.
I got to stick behind my building inspector, and there was a long discussion on that, and he told me that he felt that it met the code, met the requirements of the building code.
Okay.
Counselor Rippenbach.
Thanks, Ron. Part of my understanding is that code isn't about aesthetics. It isn't necessarily what it looks like. It's whether it does the job that it was intended to do in terms of weather protection and those kinds of things. The real reason that we invited you to come have this conversation with us started this summer when we were talking about roofing inspections after the huge hailstorm that we had, and we got into this idea that we have so many being done that maybe we shouldn't inspect them or we shouldn't have permits or whatever. And now what we've looked at in this last 15 or 20 minutes, nothing has involved roofing. And so I'd like to kind of go down that path a little bit. We can talk about what it is that you're looking for when you inspect. Good job. Nice. Way to read my mind there, dude. But what do you look for when you're inspecting? I mean, obviously, if I've done a remodeling job and the plumbing inspector has come in and the tag is tied to the pipe, what has that inspector looked for? And then the same question about a roof. You know, are they looking for specific things, not necessarily what it looks like, how attractive or unattractive it is, but what are they looking for specifically before they'll put that tag on it?
Okay, seems like when we were here last time, you all got a copy of what we have for handouts for roofing installations. Well,
I don't
this
remember.
is a
sorry, I don't
handout
remember.
that we have at our counter.
Okay.
As far as roofing installations, there is that many code requirements on roofing installations. Now, you have to understand that our inspectors are not project managers, and we don't oversee entire jobs and so forth. We're there after the roof is done, okay? But you start out with, first and above all, that a shingle has to be installed in accordance with its manufacturer's instruction requirements. And on every bundle of shingle, there is a complete description as to what's required. First of all, you're talking about 15-pound felts that has to go below a shingle. Also, we started this in about, I would say, the mid to late 90s to require what's called ice and water shield, where you have the capability of warmer air from an insulated attic to melt the snow and the ice. It'll drip down onto the soffit where it's cold, it'll freeze, and you'll get ice damming at that soffit area. So ice and water shield is a very important thing that we've dealt with the contractors since the 90s. The ice and water shield is required to go at least 2 foot above where the roof and the wall intersects in accordance with code requirements. There's fasteners, there's attachments, there's the base and cap flashing, there's valley installation. Now, rightfully so, we're not there to see all that. We're there when it's all done. And if you take a look at some of the things that we see, what we're really looking at is to make sure that the flashings are installed. And right here you have a picture of a roof-to-wall intersection where they did a good job on the step flashing, but that step flashing is exposed. If you get a snow buildup where you get water that's going to be draining along that, you're going to get water that's going to go behind that type of flashing.
So could you clarify the picture that's on the screen now? Does that pass or fail an inspection?
It doesn't pass at all.
Okay.
What you're seeing is the shingles on the lower right-hand side, and that steel flashing in there, that's interwoven with the shingles such that the water
That's the blue part for those of us that are...
Yeah, looks like galvanized steel. Right. That's interwoven with the shingles, but you have to cover that or counter flash the top of that so the water can't get over the top of that. Here's an example. You really can't see much of this, but this is where an inspector had to go up, lift up the shingles because the homeowner said they didn't put any ice and water shield on. They didn't. They had to replace the roof. Here's something that gives away about any roof. If you see a lot of blackjack, which is the tar up there, you can count on there's a code problem with that. Where you have a chimney, what's required is you can see the steel that comes up above the shingles a little bit. Again, that's flashed underneath the shingles, but then you also have to have a counter flashing, and we run into this a lot, where you have a cover that goes over the top of that flashing to make sure that the water is not going to get back behind the single flashing without the counter flashing. And here's another example of a roof vent, which is just completely blackjacked up. I mean, we do see on roof vents, on plumbing vents, on occasion that the steel is exposed and it's not covered correctly with that. You know, it's asking the building inspectors, and I get different answers from every one of them, but it sounds to me like of all the roofs that we have been doing since the hailstorm, that we're averaging about, I'd say 1 out of 25 roofs that have a code violation. And those code violations have been handled with the contractor. The contractor comes and fixes those, the contractor calls, and we get inspections. So if you're talking about, we did about 8,500 permits this last year. And 1 out of 25, you're talking about 400 cases here where our inspectors saw a code violation that the contractor had to come back on. We've had issues where the contractor cheated a little bit on the exposure with the shingles and cheated a little bit with the nails and didn't install it on a warm climate. We've had roofs shingles that have flown off because of improper installations. And we have been lucky enough this year that the contractor stood behind the jobs that they did, came back and put a new roof on. So, as a matter of fact, one other thing is that we hired a part-time building inspector that averages about 30 to 40 roofing inspections a day, in addition to our building inspector still going out and doing the roofs as they can during the day.
One more question, if I might, Madam Chair. What would be your advice to me or any other homeowner if I think that my roof it doesn't seem right? There's that blackjack or the flashing looks weird or whatever. What's your advice to me? Should I call you? Should I call City Hall? What's the?
Absolutely, and I can't tell you how many calls that we've taken. You know, we could get some flack here because we don't get up on roofs. Well, we don't. I mean, you're talking about 8,500 roofs on a year like we have never seen before, as compared to a normal year is around 2,500 roofs. You know, we do a cursory inspection from the ground. There's no question on that. But if there's a homeowner that has any question, we tell the homeowner to be out there, have a ladder, let us get on the roof. And we've done that scores and scores of time of going up on roofs. I mean, we've actually had issues with homeowners that claim, like, for instance, that they didn't have the ice and water shield, and we had to go out and have the contractor out there with us. Well, some of the contractors have wisened up a little bit, and they've taken pictures of the roof and showed that in fact there was ice and water shield. I mean, it's happened. I can't tell you how many things have happened over this last year.
Good, thank you.
Councilor Kiley.
Just very quickly, I would also say that it is up to the homeowner to complete their due diligence anytime that they're hiring a contractor to perform any kind of work. Make sure that their credentials are up to date, that they have credentials and that they are up to date, and get a number of other references as well too. And in this past year, with after the hailstorms and the large number of reshingling jobs that were taking place across the city, I do know that we had a lot of out-of-town crews in town. However, a lot of them were working for established local contractors, which is still important to me as a homeowner, because I'm one of those guys that still has to have his roof replaced this spring. You know, that I've got that contractor that's here in town that's going to back up that. So again, I think the homeowner can save themselves a lot of time and problems by completing their due diligence up front. And I'd just like to say from a personal experience, I have worked with the different inspectors on my own home projects with, and yes, that there was one electrical thing that had to be changed later on, but at least that way if committee chair Erickson comes in and plugs in her phone charger, she's not going to end up with a perm. However, so it's there for a purpose, and they were really good. But I wanted to say it served a great purpose, and they were really good to work with as well too. They were actually a source of information prior to the inspection, because I was bugging them up front, just wanting to make sure that I have all my ducks in a row. And I'm sure they were probably glad when my project was over and hoping that I wouldn't start another one. But anyway, a good, kudos to the inspectors.
Thank you.
They did a nice job.
Thank you very much.
Any other questions?
I might just want,
Go ahead.
just to kind of close this out then, I think originally council had talked about taking away this permitting process and leaving roofs to the purview of the homeowner. And I guess it would be my hope that we just thank Ron for the presentation, thank your inspectors for the work that they do, and let this stay the way that it is. I don't think we need to change.
I agree. I do have a couple questions, if you don't mind.
Sure.
My questions, I solicited some information today, just knowing that you would be here today, and solicited a few people in the industry, and as far as some questions that I had. And we all know we got the new computer system, and that's been some growing pains for many. And so my question is are the contractors and maybe electricians, plumbers, whatever, are they able to access their inspections online now? Find out the status of them. So if I have building permit 1, 2, 3, 4, can I find out like they used to be able to?
No. We're working on the CAP system. We have the EnerGov, the land management system, and we're actively getting what's called Citizen Access Portal in place so that all of that can occur. We're also, with this new system, trying to get the e-review process involved, which is going to be a wonderful thing, where our plan checkers will be able to make plans real time, where the architect can see what the changes are and change those plans while we're actually doing the plan review. But we are actively working on the Citizen Access Portal. I'm hoping that we can get that in place by early spring before the roofers start coming back in. But they're actively getting that going right now.
Okay, and that was definitely a concern that I heard several times today. And then my last question that I had, what happens if I have two small questions. What happens if there is a violation? What kind of follow-up do you do? Do you wait some time? Do you wait for them to contact you again? So say Councilor Kiley has a bad electrical outlet and he needs to fix that, and you don't hear from him in 6 months. He's like, forget it, I'm going to move on. Do you contact him again and say, what's going on? Where are you at? What's the process for that?
Whenever there's a code violation, there's an expectation that there would be a callback within 30 days.
Okay.
And if an inspector realizes that there is one, it's a matter of leaving documentation with the owner that code violation has to be taken care of. If we don't hear anything from them, it follows up with a notice of violation. Okay. A notice of violation says exactly the same thing, that the code violation has to be abated. And after that process, there's 14 days, number 1 citation, 14 days, number 2 citation, number 3, or 14 days, there's a third citation. But the vast majority of the corrections are done. Okay. But we do struggle with the amount of inspections out there, with the amount of open permits.
Right. Yeah, I could imagine. I just really encourage that online portal to get going as fast as we can, because I know that the contractors are sometimes, the other subcontractors are having a hard time getting the inspections done because they don't have the building permit number, and it just takes that extra time. And I know the industry would certainly appreciate that. So thanks for your time. Any other questions?
Yeah, just a quick question, Ron. How many inspectors do you have?
Building services staff is 26. I got 5 building inspectors, 5 electrical inspectors, 3 plumbing inspectors, 3 mechanical inspectors, and 2 plant checkers and a chief building inspector, plus the building or the permit techs, the administrative staff.
Okay. Thank you.
Any brief open discussion? We have 2 minutes.
Could I indulge one thing?
Yeah.
It's 2015. We are in the I-code cycle again.
Oh, no.
One more I-code cycle. Is there a way to deal with the council to make sure that instead of just coming for first and second reading, is there a better way of doing this where I can assure the council before we get to first and second reading that we've done our due diligence with all the different trades and so forth.
Councilor Brumback.
I think there's some value in coming to this committee. You know, you do a ton of work ahead of time, but I think there's some value in coming to this committee and then also doing an informational session. I mean, we spend some time with this, but we a lot of times vote on it and then later on go, oh, but what about that rule?
Yeah.
You voted on that already.
Yeah.
So that would be my suggestion. I know it sounds like overkill, but to do it at a committee and at an informational, I think would be very helpful.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Bell. I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved. No open discussion. Are we open discussioning?
Do you have anything?
I would gonna move to adjourn.
All right, we adjourn.